Welcome back into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by Full Press Coverage. Since we last talked last week, the United States men's basketball team and United States women's basketball team have both since won gold medals. The men's game was slightly more competitive than the women's one. Sap, I don't know if you saw that picture of Diana Taurasi holding the ball up above her head against the Japanese defender, and it looked like she was smiling, like she was, like it was like Shaq playing against a child. But as far as the U.S. men go, they had their moments against France where it looked like the game was in jeopardy, but ultimately, as it was a story for every game in the Olympics, Kevin Durant came through big time for them.
Yeah, he joins Carmelo Anthony as the only American now with 3 gold medals, and he's the all-time leading scorer among American players in the Olympics. And we know how great Kevin Durant is. And of course, what Kevin Durant had to do afterwards is, continue to fight with people and pull forward with his straw man arguments about no one thought we could do this. Well, everybody expected them to win the gold medal, and they won by 5. It's not like they obliterated the French team, which had a chance to tie the game late. But we can all breathe easier now. The United States men have won 4 straight gold medals in the Olympic Games, and the women have won 7 straight. So certainly we're the most dominant country on earth when it comes to basketball. And we kind of talked about it at the beginning of the Olympics, Jet. I think the world is catching up, but no country is catching up.
Yeah, that was a great point that you said, Seth.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the top 10 players in the NBA, and I know later in the week we're going to do a podcast with our top 10, I think 4 of the top 10 players in the NBA are foreign born. So if next year or some year in the All-Star weekend, I would prefer they went world versus the United States, because you could put Luka, Giannis, Embiid, Joker on the world team. You can throw Ben Simmons, and you could even put Kyrie Irving on the world team because he's born in Australia, and then have that against the United States team. And I think you'd have a pretty competitive game, but there's no country that has, 3 great NBA players on it. I mean, case in point, Luka Doncic, who, may have actually outperformed Kevin Durant at the Olympics, but he had no one on his squad, so he was able to get to 4th place. It lost a close game to France and then lost the bronze medal game to Australia. But, I mean, he carried that team as far as he could, and he had no other, player that's even within shouting distance of him. If Giannis had gone and played for Greece, it would have been the same with him and so forth. The United States, I mean, you can make a case Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton were the 6th and 7th best players on the roster, and that might be generous. So, yeah, the world is catching up as a group, but no one country is catching up to us. Certainly on the women's side as well.
Yeah, I think that, you saw, the teams that had the best collection of NBA talent outside of the United States, Australia, France. I mean, that's why they went so deep, because they do have NBA players, but they don't have, several star players. And the United States team was made up of virtually all star players.
Right.
So, yeah, and I think, this is what it's going to be like, though, going forward in the Olympics and any sort of international competition. The games are going to be more competitive. The teams are just better. They've played together for longer. They have more NBA players, whether or not they're star players. Doesn't matter. They still have more NBA talent. And so, the days of the United States in like 1992, beating every team by 50, that's not going to happen anymore. Yeah, you'll play a team like Iran or the Czech Republic, and you'll crush them, but you'll eventually run into a team or two like Australia and France, Spain, that's going to play you really competitively. And that's just going to continue to happen more and more. One country may never catch up to the United States, but the individual countries will continue to be more competitive.
Yeah, I mean, the 2 best Olympic teams that we've ever sent were obviously 92, the Dream Team. And I would say after that would be 08. And what did those 2 teams have in common? They were coming off of losses, in the previous Olympic Games, right? In 88 and 04, we didn't win the gold medal. So we put together the best team we could find. And also it was very hungry. I don't think we're as hungry as a nation or as a basketball power, say, as much as France or Australia or Spain are at this point. I think when they put their teams together, there's a little bit more national pride than, say, our players. And I'm not disparaging our players, but I'm saying is they're there for their brand, where it feels like the players on France, Australia, Spain, they're there for their country. So they have a little bit more to play for. I think they're slightly hungrier. They just don't have the talent to beat us on any kind of consistent basis. So I think that that's a big difference. If we lose again, I'm sure the next time we'll put together our 12 best players and obliterate whoever we face. But I think that that's the common thread in 92 and 2008. It was the Olympics after not winning a gold medal. So we essentially were shooting fish in a barrel at that point.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, Sap, and you do see there was a great scene in Slovenia. I don't know if you saw this. They came in fourth. They lost the bronze medal game to Australia, but they got a hero's welcome in Slovenia. Luka Doncic and the rest of those guys. They got into the airport. There was a crowd of 1,000+ people there cheering for them, waving their flags. This wasn't for all the Slovenian teams. This was specifically for the basketball team. Coming in fourth is a humongous accomplishment for them, and there's so much national pride there. And basketball is very popular there, partially because of Luka Doncic. And so you see, these countries, coming in fourth is a huge deal to them. I mean, in the United States, anything other than a gold medal is a massive, massive disappointment.
And even winning the gold medal this time felt like a disappointment because they had lost. Yeah. They lost the game early, and then they beat France in the gold medal game by 5. And again, France had a chance to tie it up late. It's like, what the hell's wrong with the United States? Well, these other teams are, loaded with talent. They're just not loaded like we are, where you have Kevin Durant, and, after that, you got Lillard and Tatum and Booker and Holiday and Middleton, and, you can just fill out the roster with all-stars. And we didn't even send what would be our best team. I mean, there was no LeBron or no Steph Curry or no Kawhi Leonard, no Anthony Davis. I mean, just think if we just picked the 12 best players in the NBA and sent them there, right? Even if they never congealed, they would just obliterate teams because of the difference in talent. But yeah, no, look, give Kevin Durant all the credit in the world, because here's a guy who already won 2 gold medals. He lost a heartbreaking second round series to the Milwaukee Bucks. He came off the Achilles injury of 2 years ago. He could have very easily just rested and said, I'll see you next season. Give him credit for going over there and being our best player. And also give Devin Booker, Drew Holiday, and Chris Middleton a hell of a lot of credit, because they all played in the NBA Finals and quickly got on a flight to Japan. And it must have been really tough for Booker, because his team lost in the finals, whereas Middleton and Holiday, they probably flew there without the need of an airplane.
Middleton and Holiday flew there. Sap have had like the greatest 4 weeks in the history of mankind. I mean, they must be on. Right. I mean, they just think they can't lose. They're probably going to the casino and putting their whole salary on red. They can't lose at this point. It's been an unbelievable ride for them.
It really has, and Giannis is still celebrating the championship, as they should. It was quite an accomplishment. But it's always funny with Kevin Durant, and this is what makes him so interesting, is that he does develop these straw man arguments and these enemies that maybe don't exist, but that's the way he motivates himself, and that's fine, and we know what a marvelous player he is.
Yeah. So again, one of the Olympic stars, Sap, that we just mentioned was Luka Doncic. He finishes the Olympics coming in 4th place for Slovenia, but you know what? He gets rewarded with a nice paycheck as the Mavericks flew out to Slovenia to meet him. Dirk Nowitzki, Mark Cuban, and Jason Kidd were the Mavs contingent to put the contract extension, 5 years, $207 million in front of him, which he quickly signed, because no one has ever turned down that type of extension before off of a rookie deal, and you'd have to kind of be crazy to do it. And so Luka Doncic, as soon as the pen got put in his hand, was signing that, and he is a very wealthy man now. I would venture to guess one of the wealthiest men in Slovenia. So this this seemed like, even though we hear all he's not happy about, the general manager situation, the Rick Carlisle is gone. There's all this upheaval in Dallas. He has kind of a crap roster to work with. This still was never in doubt that he was going to sign this extension.
No, I mean, that's incredible, coming off a rookie contract to sign for 5 years, $207 million, nearly $42 million a year. And you would think that Dallas will be able to put some pieces around him to get them to the point where they're seriously contending. Now, they've made the playoffs back-to-back years and lost really tough series to the Clippers, and a Clippers team that had Kawhi Leonard in those series. And Kawhi was the difference, in the bubble 2 years ago and just this concluded season. So, you can look at Luka and say, well, he hasn't broken through yet. But, I will remind people that Michael Jordan got beat by the Celtics 3 straight years in the postseason. Now, that Celtics team better than the Clippers team that just beat Luka Doncic. But Luka kind of has the feel of the early Michael Jordan era where it's like a one-man team, and now they're going to have to put some pieces around him, or LeBron in Cleveland. And I think it's difficult to put pieces around LeBron and Luka because their games are somewhat similar. I mean, LeBron's a much better defender than Luka, but offensively somewhat similar, right? I mean, they can go out and get 30, 10 assists, 10 rebounds. They're very creative, great passers, a million different ways to score. Sometimes it's tough to put the right people around them because those two guys do like everything, right? Where I think a player like Jordan was probably easier to put people around him because, look, and I'm not knocking Michael Jordan. I think he's the second greatest player ever behind only LeBron James, but his game was more narrow than LeBron's. I mean, he's a great defender, a great scorer, wasn't a great rebounder. He was a good passer, but you could fit other people around him easier. Kind of like Kevin Durant. I think it's difficult to find the right people sometimes with LeBron and Luka. It kind of works in reverse. You would think it'd be easier to put guys around them. Sometimes it's more difficult because they kind of do everything. For most of his career, if not all of his career, LeBron's been the best scorer, rebounder, and passer on his team, and Luka the same thing. So it's going to be interesting how they find the right pieces to elevate his game and elevate the team's game.
Yeah, but at the same time, I understand what you're saying, Seth, but at the same time, it's hard to say that definitively because the first couple of years of LeBron's career, he had basically a load of crap to play with, nothing.
Right.
I mean, he had guys who would, Ilgauskas who made one All-Star game, Mo Williams made like one All-Star, saying their crap is a little bit hyperbolic, but they weren't,
right.
Really good players. And same for Doncic, he's got these guys, Tim Hardaway Jr., Kristaps Porzingis, they're fine. They're average to slightly above average players, but nowhere, near Luka or LeBron's level. So I would say, maybe their games are a little bit hard to figure out, but, first things first, get more talent on the team. If that doesn't work, then you can say, okay, well, they're kind of hard to play with. But right now, there's just a talent drain in Dallas. They don't have a lot of talent on their roster outside of Doncic. And the first couple of years of LeBron, there was, very little talent in Cleveland, and same for Jordan. The first couple of years of his career, it was a one-man gang. So, this sort of happens, and you figure it out. I mean, look what just happened with the NBA champion Milwaukee Bucks. Giannis constantly was hitting a wall in the playoffs, and finally he broke through. It takes time. No one wins it immediately, except for Magic Johnson and Larry Bird, who are the rare exceptions to that, because they already were on kind of somewhat established teams when they came into the NBA. So
look at the players they played with in their rookie years. I mean, Magic was playing with Kareem, Jamal Wilkes, Norm Nixon, Michael Cooper.
That just doesn't happen anymore.
No, it's incredible what Magic was able to walk into and what Bird was able to walk into. And Bird had some older guys that could still play. Tiny Archibald, Dave Cowens, Cedric Maxwell was a young player and a guy who went on and won Finals MVP in Bird's second year. And then, of course, the heist of the Golden State Warriors getting Robert Parrish and Kevin McHale, and now you've got yourself a super team. And another guy who went to a stacked team is Charles Barkley. And Barkley went to a team, by the way, in 1984 that 2 years before that, or 2 seasons before that, had just won the NBA title with a team that may be the best single season roster in NBA history. You had Moses Malone, who's a 3-time MVP. You had Dr. J, who was an MVP. Mo Cheeks and Andrew Toney with probably the best backcourt or the second best backcourt in the NBA. Cheeks is in the Hall of Fame. If Andrew Toney didn't have bad feet, he would have made the Hall of Fame. And, oh, by the way, Bobby Jones coming off the bench, another Hall of Famer. And Barkley went there. And, this is why I pushed back with Charles Barkley, who last week was saying, I'm tired of these stacked teams and I have to put LeBron behind Michael Jordan because Jordan never had stacked teams. Well, Charles, you had stacked teams and never won jack shit. And when things started to go haywire in Philadelphia, when they traded Moses Malone and Dr. J retired and Toney and Cheeks and Bobby Jones retired and got old or whatever, he bailed out of Philadelphia, went to Phoenix, a team that won 50 games 4 consecutive years before he got there. So he was going to a somewhat stacked team. And then when it didn't work out there, he bailed out of Phoenix and went to play with Olajuwon and Pippen and didn't work. So sometimes I think, we do have Basketball Reference at our fingertips. We have Wikipedia. And in my case, being an old SOB, I remember these things happening. And that's why I kind of push back when Barkley talks about that. It's like, dude, you were like the first guy or the third guy that showed up on a stacked team. At least Bird and Magic won. You didn't win anything, and you went to a team that was absolutely loaded.
Right. Well, I mean, I think that,
It's my rant for the day, Jet.
No,
Just
I
wanted to
get
get
it.
that off
I
my
get it.
chest.
It's frustrating. I obviously, put Jordan ahead of LeBron. If you've listened to a single one of our podcasts, that's pretty clear. But I had LeBron at 2. We just have them flip flopped. And part of the reason I do is because I mean, listen, Barkley. It does sound a little bit unfair coming from him because, like you just mentioned, he did join somewhat super teams. But that is part of why I put LeBron at 2. Is that's just, to me, I think that is part of it. I think you have to weigh that in. Can LeBron still pass Jordan? Yeah, I think he can. I think the debate is still open because his career is not over yet. But right now, I still have Jordan at 1.
Well, the great thing about us, Jet, is we like that discussion. Like, I get turned off when someone says, "Oh, there's no discussion. You're an idiot for saying that LeBron's 1 and Jordan's 2." It's not like I have LeBron 1 and Jordan 8. It's like I have these 2 guys, and I was watching highlights today. They were showing great blocks by Jordan and by LeBron, and I'm watching and going, "That's why they're the 2 greatest players." Because like Magic, Bird, the other great players that were, I call them Renaissance men because they could do everything. They couldn't do that. Like the Magic and Bird could not make plays that Jordan and LeBron could make. Just physically, they couldn't. They weren't the athletes. And then you have the whole other discussion with the great centers. I mean, it's tough to compare Kareem and Russell to LeBron and to Jordan. So yeah, I mean, but at least we have that discussion. When I get people saying you're an idiot for saying this, it's not even close. I'm like, well, it is a discussion, and plus, I just don't like to take everybody who continually like trump these absolutes, right? Whatever sport we're talking about, it's like, oh, Gretzky's the greatest hockey player, but Lemieux, Orr, Gordie Howe have a say in that as well. Those are certainly candidates. It's just not.
I look at the basketball thing, Sap, is that the guy's career is not over yet. So why are you shutting the door on the argument when the career isn't over? I mean, look, I think, and we'll get far more into this as the season approaches. I think the Lakers are the title favorites, and how much I was on the Nets. I love everything the Lakers did this offseason to supplement the Westbrook move. I was so on that, but post Westbrook, I think they've built a very, very smart team. So I have them as my title favorites. I don't know if that's a spoiler for when we do our season preview or not. We'll see if the Nets make any more moves. But I mean, so LeBron could get the 5 titles, and then it's even closer argument. So plenty of story remains to go on that in terms of the Jordan LeBron debate. Let's talk about some stuff that's going on currently in the NBA, though. Not so much of a debate, and this is something that the NBA has been trying to crack down on the past couple of years because it's a running joke amongst fans and the media that, at 6:00 and 1 second on the deadline, the teams are supposed to be able to finally talk to free agents. Deals are being announced. So the NBA is looking into tampering charges for Miami Heat for acquiring Kyle Lowry and for Chicago for Lonzo Ball, I believe, is for acquiring him. Because those deals got announced almost immediately after 6:00. Now, the NBA has the ability to, in the collective bargaining agreement, void these contracts. They have the ability to fine teams up to $10 million. They have the ability to dock teams' draft picks. Sap, what do you think is going to be the result of these? I guess this investigation. We all know there was tampering. I mean, that's obvious to anybody. But is the NBA going to actually do anything about it?
Well, first of all, get rid of the term legal tampering. It's an oxymoron, right? Tampering is illegal. So how do you have legal tampering?
Right.
And yeah, I mean, it was quicker me buying a new cell phone than consummating the deal which sent Kyle Lowry to Miami, or the Lonzo Ball deal which sent him from New Orleans to Charlotte. So, New Orleans to Chicago. Yeah. So, I mean, it's obviously taking place. And how do you even stop it? I mean, the agent can contact someone else. There can be a third party and says, yeah, we're going to have a deal in place and here's what we're going to do. So it's going to continue on. There may be a fine there. I mean, Mickey Aronson, who owns the Heat, has plenty of money. The cruises are now, booked full force. So he's making back his money, which he probably lost during the pandemic, although there were a lot of government loans or whatever that probably helped out his business, which is fine. And Jerry Reinsdorf, who's notoriously cheap with the Bulls, is probably laying awake at night wondering if he's going to get fined. But there may be a fine. Draft picks, all right, if you want to take a second round pick down the road, I don't think they're going to void these deals. I mean, was the Minnesota Timberwolves like the one team that got punished the most for tampering
Yes,
back
by far.
several years ago? And then kind of last year, Milwaukee, right? Because didn't they have a piece in place for Bogdanovich as a
And that got
free
voided.
agent, a sign-in trade, and that got voided? Look, the league, I want to see Chicago, and I'm not one of these people that says, the league is that much better with the Knicks in it, because the Knicks have sucked for a lot of years, and the NBA is fantastic. I mean, this isn't 1973 when you need the big media markets to be great for the league to be successful. I mean, look at Oklahoma City when they had Durant, Westbrook, and Harden. They were must-watch TV. I mean, it's a national sport more so than, say, baseball, which is a regional sport. So I'm not big on, we need the Bulls to be good because that makes the league
look at
better.
this past finals.
Yeah, Milwaukee against Phoenix, and you still had an enthralling finals. I mean, LeBron's played in Cleveland. Steph Curry's played the Bay Area. And I know San Francisco is, a top 10 market, but you still have a feel that it's Oakland or whatever. Yeah, the Lakers, that's great. That's the biggest brand in basketball. It was nice having the Knicks back. So it's not like you can't say, well, we're not going to punish Chicago because we want Chicago back, or we like the idea of Miami being a relevant team. So I don't think much is going to happen. I mean, that's where the players wanted to go, and it worked out. So maybe there's a fine in place, a second-round pick or whatever. Maybe they schedule an exhibition game and the money goes to charity. I don't know. There's all different ways to do this.
Yeah, Sap, Minnesota got the Joe Smith contract voided and lost 4 first-round draft picks.
How's that?
That's a crazy, for somebody who's not that good of an NBA player. That's really painful.
That's crazy. I mean, no wonder Minnesota's never been good. They haven't recovered from that. 4 first-round
that's
picks.
Brutal.
Did David Stern just wake up on the wrong side of the bed that day?
He was pissed about that.
He was pissed about something, and then he would.
That was cap manipulation, though. That wasn't tampering. They were paying him under the table in addition to his salary. That I can see you taking very seriously, because it gives you a much more unfair competitive advantage if you're circumventing the salary.
Haven't the Nets kind of been doing that? And there's going to be a book coming out in October kind of detailing it. In fact, I reached out to the author to see if we can get him on. He hasn't responded back, but there's something going on with the Nets where they offer the players more than just salaries. I mean, it's not.
The NBA should take that very seriously then.
Yeah, I mean, if it's a case
that's what's
where
happening.
Right. I mean, there's the NCAA goes too far on that. Like, if you fly a kid home for a funeral, you violated NCAA protocol, and next thing you know, the team is on suspension. Don't go that far, but yeah, those are things that you kind of have to look into. I mean, you can go as far as, were they handing Joe Smith cash in a brown paper bag?
They were. They were. No, they were. Yeah. Do you know what they were doing? They were putting it in his shoes in the locker room. They were putting wads of cash in his shoes. That's how they were doing it.
You're kidding me.
No, that's how they did it. They put wads of cash in his shoes in the locker room. That's how they were. And
oh my God, I had
how they got caught.
The story.
That's how they did it.
This sounds like something like the world's dumbest criminals.
Well, we're not talking about a particularly well-run organization.
No, I mean, I'm thinking that, the Spurs or the Warriors or whatever would have been more like, that's so like Belichick or Popovich would be devious, right? And do something that you couldn't really catch. That's got to be the dumbest.
Do it, do it for Kevin Garnett. Do it for Tim
Joe
Duncan.
Smith,
do it
right? Yeah,
Joe Smith is not the guy you risk it all for.
Did he forget and play with the cash in his sneakers, and he ended up, with plantar fasciitis? I mean, that's got to be you know what? I had either forgotten the story or didn't know about it. When you said that, I thought you were just joking. That's
how they did it.
That's laughable. They should have been thrown out of the league for that, Jet. Forget the 4 first-round pick for being that stupid.
Yeah, I don't know what's dumber, the doing it in the shoes and putting the money there inside sort of plain sight, or that was the guy they decided to risk their franchise for.
Holy cow! Now A-Rod's running things. I mean, A-Rod used to stick needles up, in his ass, and then remember some of the shenanigans he pulled on the field, right? Trying to elbow the ball out of Bronson Arroyo's glove, or running by the third baseman, going boom.
No, we're not talking about a world-class organization here, Seth.
No, now you got A-Rod as the owner, who gets has more lives than Felix the cat.
Which is looked at as an improvement, so that tells you
right. That's true. Yeah,
bad of a situation it is. There.
Except your man Anthony Edwards.
Thank God they have Anthony Edwards there.
Oh
he's
my
awesome.
God, he's spectacular, and he didn't know who A-Rod was.
No,
although the only thing about Anthony Edwards, and I love him, the personality is like he makes Jalen Ramsey look mild, but he talked about what a great baseball player he was, and then he went to a Twins game and threw out the first pitch. Not the best form. So that's the only thing, so if you're going to go out there and say, oh yeah, I got to play Major League Baseball, you better have better form than that. It's almost
Did
like,
you see
it's like
him
Milos
at the Summer League game?
That was great. Yeah. Now he's a swimmer. He's Michael
yeah,
Phelps.
He's a great swimmer.
Oh no, he's awesome. It's fantastic. I mean, I'm trying to think how he and Karl Anthony Towns mesh, because Karl Anthony Towns is like one of the quietest, like most respectful guys in the league, to the point where I think that kind of impacts his play. It's like, Cat, be more forceful.
Yeah,
except
with Embiid. He hates Embiid.
Yeah. I think Embiid's got a lot of enemies in the league. That's why Embiid's a great character.
Yeah. I think ultimately I could see a fine and potentially a first-round pick if they take it if they really want to stick it to them. That would seem to be a very harsh penalty. It just depends on if the NBA wants to really send the message. But I've heard this suggested, and I think it's a no-brainer. The way to solve this is if you're an impending free agent, once the season ends, then you're allowed to talk to teams. Why is there an arbitrary deadline?
Right. Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying the guys who are under contract, that's different. The guys who are impending free agents, like Kyle Lowry was, like Lonzo Ball, why are you having them wait weeks?
Right.
It makes no sense.
Just do it. Yep.
The day the NBA Finals ends or the day their season ends, for hell, why not that? They can talk to teams. Their contractual obligations are filled at that point. So just do that, and then you don't have to deal with this anymore. Then there's no more tampering. I don't know why. It's the same thing I don't know why the NBA on draft night doesn't just ratify these trades as they go instead of saying, they give the guys the hat and they look stupid taking a picture of the hat for the wrong team. They could just do it rapidly. Instead, they do all this red tape for Adam Silver. I agree with you, is the best commissioner in sports right now. But this seems like such a no-brainer. It's kind of hard to believe he hasn't implemented either the thing with the free agents or the thing on draft night, because they seem like easy fixes.
Absolutely, yeah. Just be transparent about it. All right, John Morant. I've got John Morant on the brain because I just saw on ESPN they wished him a happy 22nd birthday. I wish I was 22 again. That was 36 years ago. But in the case of Kyle Lowry, he's a free agent. Let's get it done. I mean, do you need this grace period? No, just go ahead and let's do this, or just set the date, and then there's no such thing as this grace period, and say, okay. Or I think you have the best suggestion. Just it's out there. We know it's going to happen. So what are we hiding?
Right. And the thing is too, they could void the contract. I don't think they will, but if they did, that really screws the player now because everybody spent their money. No one has money left. So all the money's dried up. So Kyle Lowry, Lonzo Ball are going to have to, be left with, mid-level exemption money or veterans minimum money. That's not fair.
Or you're sending them back to their other teams, and it's too confusing. Just there'll be some sort of fine, a loss of a draft choice, whatever. I don't think Adam Silver's anywhere near as vindictive as David Stern was, especially late in Stern's career. And I think he's one of the greatest commissioners ever.
Draconian late in his career.
Oh man, I mean, you didn't want to cross that guy. And I think that Adam Silver was good. Adam Silver's a big picture guy. I think he's looking at it and saying, okay, I mean, if I really want to be there with an iron fist, I'm going to do this, but what exactly does that benefit? Now the league looks stupid, like putting $100 bills in a player's sneaker,
Yeah. Good point, Sap.
Yeah. That's great.
Right.
That's awesome. I wish someone would do that with me. Yeah.
Yeah. That would be really nice. Right. Joe Smith was certainly the big beneficiary of all that. not the Timberwolves. You want to talk a little bit about the Celtics, Sap? I know I've tried to avoid it like the plague, but let's get into some what the Celtics have done this offseason, which is very little. They did bring back Enes Kanter, who just bobs around between Portland, Boston, Portland. He loves those two locations. He's back in green, making veterans minimum money. It's whatever. That's fine. I like his personality. I think the guys on the team like him. He's an excellent offensive player. He's a horrible defensive player. So he's kind of like a net zero plus minus guy, which is better than a net negative plus minus guy. So if he's your third center behind Horford and Rob Williams, okay, you could certainly do worse than that. And so that's their big move they've made so far. But a lot of rumors surrounding the team now that they're trying to bring in Dennis Schroeder, who was on the Lakers last year, turned down a big extension, and it's really bit him in the ass. The Celtics are offering him a 1-year contract. He only wants a 1-year contract because he wants to try to earn some big money. The discrepancy now is the Celtics are offering him there's a full mid-level exemption and a partial mid-level exemption. He wants the full, they want the partial. It's a difference of about $4 million. The Celtics just don't want to be hard capped because they don't want to pay the luxury tax because they're cheap. Schroeder wants to, naturally maximize however much money he's going to earn, even especially on a 1-year deal before he goes back into free agency. I think he'd be a great fit on the team. Listen, he struggled at times a lot for the Lakers last year, especially in the postseason, and especially when LeBron and Davis were hurt. But I really like the idea of having him as the starting point guard, taking pressure off Marcus Smart, who we're going to talk about in a second, and not giving Marcus Smart as much offensive responsibility. And take Schroeder, play defense, be a distributor, never shoot, let the offense, Tatum and Brown, those are your scorers. You could drive to the basket, don't shoot threes, pass, play good defense. And I think the Celtics would be a better team than they were last year. With
good luck with that, because I'm sure the Lakers probably said that to him as well, and he obviously didn't pay too much attention to it. But
maybe he'd respect Ime Udoka more than
LeBron James. Yeah, or LeBron James in that case, absolutely.
No one respects LeBron James.
No, he's just the greatest player ever, and everybody seems to want to play with him, but no one listens to him. But I think with Schroeder, it would be a nice addition, because at this point, beggars can't be choosers. And look, the guy is an accomplished player. He was sixth man of the year, or finished second in sixth man of the year voting with Montrezl Harrell. I forget which one won. The Lakers got both of them, and they both sucked for the Lakers. But I think that what you could look with Schroeder, have him as your starting point guard. I think Marcus Smart would be perfect as a sixth man, and maybe you sell it to him as, look at the tradition of the Celtics sixth man. You had, Frank Ramsey, you had John Havlicek, you had Kevin McHale. It's like, although that doesn't really sell anymore, because most of the players in the league, if not all the players in the league, maybe with the exception of maybe LeBron and Chris Paul, like really grasp the history of the league. Like, those guys would probably understand it. Of course, neither one's ever going to be a sixth man, but maybe sell it to Marcus Smart. You can be our guy coming off the bench who can, be the leader of our second unit. You can bring that defensive intensity. I think it would be a good move. Now, if this is being held up over $4 million, shame on the Celtics. I mean, really, you've coming off a pretty disastrous year. You have a new coach, you got a new president of basketball operations. You didn't do anything in free agency. I mean, Enes Kanter, I think we like him more as a person than a player at this point in his career. Yeah. But get this guy. He's the best available player that's left. Here we are, 2 weeks after free agency. So, if this is being held up over $4 million, then do something to make this happen. I don't know how, but, if it means adjusting salary, whatever, that's their job, not mine. That would be insane. And you've got a guy playing on a 1-year deal who is obviously motivated to get a big contract. Now, that backfired for Schroeder last year, who was also in that situation and was looking for 4 years, $80 million. This cost him a lot of money, but maybe he'll refocus and understand what he has to do. Yeah, why not? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense that they don't get this done.
Yeah, again, we talked about this, Sap, and you know what? To your credit, Sap, and obviously I want to give you credit because you're my dear friend and my co-host. You were on this first. I didn't hear anybody say it. You said it months ago. The Celtics owners have become cheap, and whether it's the pandemic or whatever, it's become a monetary thing with the Celtics, where every move they make is focused on dollars and cents, as opposed to how do we make this team better, who's the best person for what job, etc. And I think this is another example of it right here, is that they're, nickel and diming Dennis Schroeder, who is the best possible player they can get in free agency now. And they didn't make any sort of bold moves or interesting moves in free agency. And they're hung up because they don't want to pay a little bit of a luxury tax. Now, okay, it's easy for you and I to say, why don't you just pay it? These owners are rich, and that's different to every person, but they are still rich. They are still wealthy. The Celtics aren't their primary source of income. I just hate when owners become cheap, Sap, especially in big markets, because, there's tons of other people who have the money that would love to just pay up the wazoo for a team. And so it sucks as a fan to see your team being held back by owners who are worried about their purse strings.
Now, I'm going to go a little bit deeper into this in terms of financial stuff. I think they're the most underfinanced team in the city, right? I mean, Robert Kraft's worth $7.5 billion. I mean, he owns an NFL franchise that's worth $5.7 billion. John Henry's well off. The Red Sox are worth $4 billion. The Bruins, again, it's hockey. It's not quite at the level of the other three major sports, but look, Jeremy Jacobs is a wealthy guy. I mean, Delaware North is a one of the biggest sole proprietorships, if that's even the term to use, or one of the wealthiest businesses in the country owned by one man. I mean, it's probably a better word for that. Sole proprietor. I think the Celtics are underfinanced, and I wonder about their owners. Like, what's their revenue stream, and where else do they have their wealth? It seems like their wealth is that they bought the team for what, $350 million in 2002, and now the team is worth $2.5 billion. So it's gone up, sevenfold since they bought it, which is great. But that doesn't mean anything until you sell it. So I wonder how underfinanced they are. And we know the NBA took a big hit during the pandemic. I mean, you didn't have fans in the stands till later in the season. The previous year, there were a lot of complications from that. I just wonder if they're just on a shoestring at this point, because I looked at it when they decided to move on from Danny Ainge and then made Brad Stevens the president of basketball operations. That just screamed of, well, we've got to pay him anyway, so let's give him another position within the organization.
I mean, like you're dead on accurate. I think you hit it right there.
I said it that day, and I think, if they really wanted to get someone who was accomplished at that position, wasn't Sam Presti, your guy, very interested in that? But that would have taken, 5 years, $25 million to pay him, and you still got to pay Brad Stevens, so you're paying two people for the job of one. This almost sounds like, a guy who has a restaurant and has a chef that, has a contract, if anyone does, and then you're tired of his menu, and then you decide, you know what, I still have to pay the guy, so now he's not going to be the chef, but he's going to be the front end manager, and the qualifications are different. If you've ever worked in a restaurant, there's the front end and there's the back end, and they're separate. So I kind of get this with Brad Stevens, like, okay, we're not happy with him as a coach, but we think he can be a really good executive. Oh, okay. The reason you did that is because you're on the hook for $35 million. So I just wonder if the Celtics are just underfinanced more than they're cheap. And I don't know what their financial situation is at this point.
They should sell the team then, period. I mean,
at that point, sell the team. Yeah, at that point,
sell the team.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean,
because at that point, it just becomes a vanity project, and you're just owning the team to say, hey, look at my business card. I'm the owner of the Celtics. If you're not trying to help contribute to them winning, then, get out of the way. Sell the team. Take the big payday, the huge return on your investment that you made, and, go right off into the sunset. But sell the team to somebody. The fans deserve, especially in Boston, where, there's such a great tradition of winning, the fans deserve owners who will go above and beyond to, spend beyond the cap to put the team in the best position to win, period. There should be no cheap owners in this city. It's too big of a media market. The fans are too passionate. There's too much winning going on for teams to be nickel and diming. And then that's what's happened to Celtics. Frankly, for less of a reason, that's what's happened to the Red Sox right now.
Yeah.
Look what happened at the trade deadline. And I know we're a basketball show, but I'm sure people are somewhat adjacent sports fans who are listening. The Red Sox went cheap at the trade deadline. They didn't make a move, didn't add pitching, didn't add first baseman. They could have gotten into it, but they didn't want to pay, and they didn't want to give up prospects. They went cheap, and they've been paying for it since the trade deadline. They've been losing like crazy. The teams in the city should never go cheap. There's no reason for it. They sell out every game. The fans are rabid about it. There's absolutely no reason. I'll give the Bruins credit. They were for a long time cheap, and they've really changed their ways in the past, 15 years, where they started paying players. I mean, they didn't have to re-sign Taylor Hall this offseason, and they did. And, they've made that change. The Patriots, who for some reason have gotten labeled as cheap in the past, which is untrue. They always spent to the cap. Spent the most money of any team this offseason. So, the Celtics are sort of sticking out like a sore thumb here because not only have they gone cheap, but they haven't won in a while. The Red Sox, they won a couple. They had their best season in franchise history just a few years ago. Right. So they have a little bit of a grace period. People don't like John Henry, the ownership. That's fine. And that people, I get you're frustrated, but they at least have won 4 World Series, since 2004. The Celtics have won 1 title since 2008. It's just not the same situation. So it's frustrating. And if Dennis Schroeder is somebody I believe can help this team and maybe not put them over the mark for a championship, but make them better than they were last year, and they're concerned over a couple $1 million with the guy.
Yeah, no, it's insane. And Jed, if you became a sports fan in 2001, which I think a lot of people in the city became a sports fan in 2001. Now, you at that time were 12 years old, but you were already a sports fan. But, I think that Boston is a vastly overrated sports city, but that's a discussion for another day. But let's say you became a sports fan in 2001. The Celtics have been the worst team in the city, right? Because the Patriots obviously have 6 Super Bowl wins. They're number one. The Red Sox, as much as people despise John Henry, they've won 4 World Series. The Bruins have won a cup and went to 2 more finals and have been pretty consistent year in and year out. Yeah, they get knocked out in the second round a lot, but they've given you a pretty decent product over the last, especially 15 years. The Celtics have gone from being a contender for several years with Garnett, Pierce, and Allen to sucking for a while and then building it up slowly and then getting close to maybe building a championship caliber team and then effing it up to the point now where they're, the 6th, 7th, 8th best team in the Eastern Conference. And we won't even get into what they were before Garnett came here. They had a little run, obviously, in 2002, getting to the conference finals. But of the 4 major sports teams, they've been the worst. Now, if the New England Revolution win the MLS Cup, which they're favored to do now.
Right now. Yeah.
They're in first place. They will have been more productive than the Celtics because they would also have a championship, but they've gone to many more finals. And I'm kind of that, deep thinking person that thinks that losing in the finals is better than not going to the finals. Like, I know that doesn't
that's a fact
necessarily. Yeah, it is. I mean, it's like, we just watched the Olympics. If I was an Olympian, 3 golds and 3 silvers is better than 3 golds and no silvers. And I've tried to get that through people's minds, whether it be Skip Bayless or whoever else. And well, obviously Rob Parker's the one who pushes back on that the most, that, losing the Super Bowl is some sort of bad thing, or losing the NBA finals is a bad thing. Apparently losing in the conference semifinals is more of an accomplishment. Ben Volen also buys into that the Super Bowl losses are worse than not going at all, which is idiotic.
Insane.
It really is. It's just, go back to school. Would you prefer 3 A's and 3 B's, or would you prefer 3 A's and 3 D's? You tell me what was a better report card. When you had to bring that home to your parents, the 3 A's and 3 B's would get you, a gift. 3 A's and 3 D's would probably get you kind of a side-eyed look from your parents and maybe, grounded. So at that point, the Revolution could surpass the Celtics because they would have won a championship and gone to more finals. Heck, the Boston Militia, the Women's Football League team that I covered for when we were all working at 1510, I think it's won more championships than the Patriots, actually. But I'm of course, I'm being hyperbolic here.
The Cannons, the lacrosse team, I think, has won two titles recently.
BC and BU have won numerous hockey championships. UMass just won the national championship. And I mean, like, people are winning all over the place. And here's the Celtics, who kind of skate. And then I get their history is incredible, but in the modern times, since the turn of the century, they've been the worst of the 4 major sports teams in Boston. Fact, not opinion. And here they are. They're not sure if they want to add a guy because it's $4 million. Like a pretty accomplished player. I mean, we're not talking about some stiff. We're talking about a guy who can help your team. I love your point of, like, maybe you bring Marcus Smart off the bench, and you got to do a sales job on these guys to kind of get them into their role, but that could work.
Yeah, I think that this ownership group, came in obviously with a lot of promise 20 years ago, and they won a title in 2008, and they restored the franchise from in the 90s where they were really terrible to being, constantly competitive, and they get credit for that. But now they have seemed sort of directionless. They have these 2 young stars, but they don't really seem to know how to build around them. They seem like they've lost interest in paying players, in trying to do everything they can. So yeah, I mean, honestly, I'll be the first person at the Garden to start the Sell the Team chants. I might make shirts and sell them outside the Garden.
I like that.
Street vendors. I think people should get behind that. I have no patience for cheapness in ownership groups. If people are paying their hard-earned money and selling out the Garden constantly, the owner should repay that with spending, to the cap and beyond. Period. That's how I look at it, especially in this city, where championships are the measuring stick. You need to do that. So We'll see if the Dennis Schroeder thing comes to fruition from a basketball sense. I think we both agree it works out, especially on a 1-year deal. It doesn't tie them up for being in the Bradley Beal mix next offseason or another free agent. And Dennis Schroeder gets another chance as, really motivated to try to earn back some money that he lost by turning down the $84 million deal with the Lakers, which obviously he got horrible advice from his agent and should fire his agent.
Man.
Yeah, that's just, he's taking a bath on that.
That's the worst maneuver by a player / agent since Nomar. Remember when the Red Sox offered Nomar, I think it was 5 years, $70 million. He turned it down. Then the injuries started to add up and he never got that money back. I mean, look, sometimes athletes get greedy. That's kind of what makes them great athletes, right? Because they have that mindset. But there's times where, you look at that contract and there's a lot of zeros on it. Just sign it. That's like you said.
That's the agent's job, though. You got to protect the athlete from himself and the agent. So exactly. I 100% blame the agent. I don't believe Dennis Schroeder is his own representative. So right. He should fire his agent. That's just he got either awful advice or didn't get nearly enough pushback when he said, I want to try to make more money. So the agent did a horrible job, a really, really terrible job.
Agent malpractice, right? I mean, when Luka returned to Slovenia and, the Mavericks hierarchy were there to meet him, and I'm sure Luka's agent was there, who's getting 3 or 4%, who's going to pocket $7-8 million for that deal. Good for them. Yeah, that's not bad. And you become close friends with Luka Doncic. How cool is that? Maybe you can meet Luka's mother, who's extremely hot and in her early 40s, I believe.
Yep. Well, good. Everything's coming up Luka Doncic.
Oh, Luka's got a great life.
A team around him. Sat, the last thing I want to talk about is you've got some pushback on Twitter because you said you're really excited about Israeli point guard. Maybe Celtic player Yam Madar. He had a nice first game in Summer League. The Celtics are back in action tonight at 7:00, actually, in Summer League play. He looked fine in game one. He brought a lot of energy on the court. People were not happy that you said you were really excited about him, Sap. What were your early impressions of him?
He looks fine. I just want to see him play. I mean, first of all, it was partly tongue in cheek. I mean, it's a guy who's drafted in the second. No, you can't do that. No one gets sense of humor or just having some fun. And I just like his name too. I like any name where the first name ends with a letter and then the surname starts with the same letter.
Okay.
Yam Madar. I mean, that's like a cool name, right? And so I want to see him play. I guess he's 19 years old. So let's see what he can bring. I mean, we kind of saw what Peyton Pritchard could do. Maybe he's an upgrade. Maybe he's an upgrade from Carson Edwards. Having that.
He's definitely an upgrade from Carson Edwards. Edwards is terrible.
Right. So let's get him on the roster. Maybe he needs another year of development. I mean, we're going to have. Who knows? So I just want to see the kid play. It's like people, the Celtics Twitter is very serious. I mean, it's like, well, it seems to me all of Twitter is way too serious. I mean, I kind of put out a poll a couple days ago, not necessarily tongue in cheek, because I'm a little bit cynical and I like to be a contrarian. I'm like, did Tom Brady showing up to the Hall of Fame ceremony for Peyton Manning, was that him just being a friend or was he trolling him? And I think it's partly he was trolling him a little bit. The old line from The Godfather, keep your friends close, your enemies closer. I mean, now everyone's talking about Brady and Manning are best friends and all that stuff. And I don't buy into it. I think, Brady was there and he was actually the biggest star at Peyton Manning's Hall of Fame induction.
It's crazy, Sap.
But let's have a discussion about that. And some guy goes, anybody with a brain, which apparently I don't have, wouldn't think that that's possible. But let's dig a little deeper.
I thought it's so funny to see other people who were wearing the gold jackets in awe of Tom Brady. Roger Staubach was like talking behind. He's like, wow, what you did with the Buccaneers this season was amazing. Like, you're Roger Staubach. You're in awe of Tom. He's the biggest star there. I mean, he doesn't have the gold jacket yet. And he's everybody's in awe of him. It's kind of remarkable.
Well, it'd be like Babe Ruth showing up to, Hall of Fame induction ceremonies while he was playing, which wasn't even possible. I believe he was in the first class. So, I mean, it's the same reverence that you see for Brady, you see with Michael Jordan. That Michael Jordan shows up, he's the guy. So it's like Tom Brady shows up, he's the guy. And look, I mean, they could be friends. I think everything Brady does is with a purpose. And, I think he may have been trolling a little bit. That's just my own take there. Although Peyton Manning's speech was outstanding, and, maybe someday he'll be commissioner of the NFL, because I think he'd be fantastic at that. He's a phenomenal public speaker. He is just so comfortable doing
he
that.
obviously has a lot of experience, doing commercials and stuff like that.
He's so good at that stuff. And Brady's good at it. He doesn't really say much, but he's, most of the quarterbacks are damn good at that, because that kind of comes with the territory. You're the de facto CEO of the team. We saw Aaron Rodgers' press conference last week, which was 32 minutes of gold. Whether you like him or not, and he's my favorite player. The content was just phenomenal. He went on a scorched earth tour of his own team and own city, saying, Green Bay, we know, is not a tourist destination. They come here to play with me and win championships. And I'm like, as much as I love Aaron, division championships are we talking about? Because he's only won one Super Bowl title.
Right.
So, yeah, but those guys, the quarterbacks you have to be kind of comfortable doing that stuff. It may explain why Andrew Luck retired, because he was never really that comfortable doing that.
No, he's kind of
more of a quiet.
He loved
guy,
reading. Remember, that was his favorite activity. Was reading by himself.
Yeah, it was in a book club, and certain guys just and that's a big part of it though. When I see a future quarterback, and we've talked about it before, and I know we're going off the rails here, but what the hell, why not? I'm in the market for my next favorite quarterback when Rodgers retires, which hopefully isn't for 3-4 years, and hopefully he can win a Super Bowl or two. And right now, Justin Herbert's the front runner. Your guy from Oregon. I think he, first of all, is incredibly talented. I think he has as good an arm as any quarterback in football. He can move. He's also was a pre-med student, so I think he got like a 4.0 grade point
academic
average.
All-American.
Yeah, he's off the charts, and I think he's also 6'5", 6'6", 240. He can move. I think he's more skilled than Trevor Lawrence. I think he's more skilled than Josh Allen. Now, we'll see 5 years from now which one's the best quarterback, but he's the heir apparent. But I look at that stuff of how a guy handles himself, as much as how much they can throw and move and do all those things. And Manning aces that, as does Brady. I think Rodgers is a guy who, is somewhat aloof and condescending, so that may turn some people off. But that's
definitely condescending.
Oh, absolutely. The beginning of that press conference, I was on the floor laughing, because it was like he was detailing what he did in the summer, and he's like, the person said, "Oh yeah, how was your summer? How was Hawaii?" He goes, "Yeah, Hawaii was great, but actually it was the spring." It's like, okay, Aaron, we know that it took place before the summer, but
he doesn't want to be there. He doesn't want to be doing this. This is not what he wants right now.
But he was damn good at it. I was like, the content was spectacular. Like, he had a list of like guys that he thought should have stayed there. It was really well thought out. I think he's, for what we do, Jet, in the content business, he's gold. Like, some of the stuff LeBron does is gold. Some of the stuff that obviously Durant does, that's gold. Kawhi doesn't do anything, say anything, but in some ways he's also content gold, because he's a mystery.
Yeah.
Right. So that's what we're here for. Like, Russell Wilson to me is kind of just dull. Like, he's just like a cliche. Whereas, now Brady, that he's kind of, become the old guy with no filter. I think it's kind of fun. And the same thing with Rodgers. He apparently, has no filter either.
Yeah. I think that obviously sports, and what's great about it is personality driven a lot of the time. And I think that the NBA certainly it has understood that maybe better than any other league.
Yep.
And I think a lot of the other leagues are trying to emulate what the NBA does, but it's hard. Football, they got the helmets, and no one really cares what an offensive lineman has to say. No offense to the offensive lineman fans in the audience. And so, you're limited. Hockey, a lot of, over half the league is foreign born. And in baseball, they literally have rules against having personality. So the NBA is able to shine in that way.
That's where I think it's important. Fernando Tatis could be that guy. Vladimir Guerrero Jr.
If they let
could be that guy. If they let them, I think they're letting Tatis do it. The only problem with Tatis, he plays with so much energy and passion, and it's fabulous. But he keeps getting hurt. Like, he takes such big rips that he's constantly popping his shoulder out. Like Bo Bichette from Toronto. I love watching Toronto play. Their lineup is just loaded with characters and guys that just mash. And Bo Bichette's another guy who's, maybe 5'11", 185 pounds, and he swings from his ass and hits the ball a mile. Like, he hits it farther than his dad did, who was a great power hitter, Dante Bichette. So, yeah, let these guys be personalities. and basketball's made for it because it's the one sport without helmets, right? You see them, like you see their tattoos because they wear tank tops. Where the other sports, like you said, the football players got helmets and shoulder pads and all that stuff, and it's made for personalities. You're a big boxing guy. That's all about personality, right? I mean,
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, you
that's
fight
a big
all combat sports are. I mean, you have
right.
to.
It's all about personality. I mean, Floyd Mayweather, Conor McGregor,
Muhammad Ali, probably
Muhammad
the
Ali,
greatest
more than
personality in the
anyone.
history of sports.
Exactly. Sugar Ray Leonard. I mean, look, Larry Holmes was an accomplished heavyweight, but he had no personality. So he was never anywhere near as popular as, say, Ali, who obviously was a better fighter, or Mike Tyson, who wasn't as good a fighter as Larry Holmes, but he had that personality, that aura about him. Yeah, that's what sells tickets. Like, it's like I always try to push back on people and say, and like, with my tweet about Yam Madar, I go, guys, this is entertainment. Like just loosen up a little bit. This isn't, the nuclear codes are being
barking up the wrong
held.
tree.
Yeah, no, exactly. Because people on Twitter with their 17 followers, have to have some opinion.
Yeah. Well, tomorrow, Sap, we got a special show coming on. We have author Pete Croatto, who has written From Hang Time to Prime Time, a new book out about the NBA between 1976 and 1989, when the league really evolved into, as we were just talking about, personalities, exactly as we were just detailing, Sap. And so we'll talk to Pete tomorrow on the show about his book, about the NBA from that time period and what he thinks about the NBA right now. So excited to have Pete on tomorrow, and make sure, and we'll plug the book tomorrow too, but it's called From Hang Time to Prime Time if you want to get a little sneak preview of it before we interview Pete tomorrow. And we'll have plenty more NBA content to talk about as the offseason rolls on. So Sap, looking forward to talking to Pete tomorrow. Thank you for setting that up, by the way. Sap is the guy with all the contacts. I know nobody.
You're Aaron Rodgers. You're a bit aloof and a bit arrogant.
I'm above it all, Sap. I don't.
You're above it all. That's right.
I don't interact with the riffraff on Twitter.
I'm Peyton Manning. I'm everybody's best friend.
Exactly. So we'll be back tomorrow for a new edition of the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap. We are presented by Full Press Coverage. Make sure you check us out wherever podcasts are found, or on the YouTube at youtube.com/JetStryer. I sound a million years old. The YouTube. It's just YouTube. Come on, Jet. Do better than that. All right. We'll be back tomorrow with author Pete Corrado. Make sure you listen to that, and we'll talk to you later. See ya.